Okay, here's an example, and I'm just going through examples of the questions that are on the Part 1 test. I'm going to get my pen going here. Don't want to use black ink. We won't be able to see it. All right. Get this palette out of my way. Okay, there we go. The area of a parallelogram is 75 meters squared. The sum of its bases is 30 centimeters. Each slanted side measures 3 centimeters, so what is the height? Well, when I'm given a problem like this, I always draw the figure. I'm talking always. And I don't care how hard the figure is to draw, I draw some kind of semblance of it. And when I say that, I'm talking about like a heptagon or an octagon. Those aren't always easy to draw. But I'm going to go ahead and label it with information that I've been given. It said the slanted side measures 3 centimeters. So that means these sides right here are 3 centimeters because they're the slanted sides. Now then, it says, I remember I told you for Part 2 you're going to have to remember the properties of a parallelogram, but it's not going to hurt you to know that information for this problem as well. It says the sum of the bases is 30 centimeters. So can someone tell me what the measure of the bases are? If each base is 30, if the sum of the bases is 30, that's right for Daz. We're talking 15 centimeters each. Now then, this is where remembering the properties comes in handy, because if you remember a parallelogram, the opposite sides are parallel and they're also congruent. So these sides right here have equal measures, these sides right here have equal measures. That's how I was able to jump in there and say, oh, if one slanted side is 3 centimeters, then the other one's going to be 3 as well. Now they want us to find the height. So anytime I add an extra line to a drawing like that, I always make it a dashed line. And that dashed line is going to represent the height that I'm looking for. Okay, well, the formula for finding the area of a parallelogram is base times height. They told me the area, and I know the measure of the base is 15, and I don't know the height yet. That's what I'm trying to figure out. So whenever you're given problems like this, you're going to just plug in the information you know and then solve for what's left. That's all you've got to do. So I believe when you divide both sides by 15, I believe you get 5. Y'all might want to check my math on that. But I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Does anybody have any questions? Because there's several problems that are on this Part 1 test where you're having to write down the formula, fill in the information you're given, and solve for the unknown. And I know it throws students off whenever they have to, oh, they've already given me the area, then how am I going to find this other stuff? They forget about the formulas. So that's all you got to do is just get the formula, plug in what you know, and solve for the unknown. Okay, now on this one it says, and what I did on each one of these, I just took that list that I gave you at the beginning and I copied what I said on that list. It says solving for an unknown value when given the perimeter. It says, well, the perimeter of the pentagon is 52.5 centimeters. What's going to be the value of x? So my perimeter is 52.5. And how do I calculate perimeter? No matter what the shape is. Well, unless it's a circle. Ferdeos, that's correct. The sum of the distance around. So what Ferdeos is saying is I've got to go and I've got to add up each one of these sides. Well, remember the tick marks tell you who's congruent to who. So I'm going to go ahead and add this information right here. So I know what the measure of each side is. Now, I've got this x plus 4 and this x plus 4. I'm going to take a shortcut on adding those up, okay? And I'm going to tell you another quick thing that I do when I see a problem like this. I look at all my x's. There's 2x, an x, and an x. Well, that's 4 x's right there. That's 5 x's, and that's 6 x's. Okay, I just add them up in my head right there real quick. Okay, 4 plus 4 is 8, minus 3.5, I believe is going to give you 4.5. Because 3.5 and 3.5 would be 7. Okay, so that's just me using my number sense there. Okay, but let's go ahead. That's how I do it really quick. I would say I would add up those x's, and then I would put plus 4.5. Oh, I'm fixing to show you for Deos. I was just telling you the quick way that I do it. I just look at all those x's and add them up, and then I look at all the numbers and I add those up. And 4.5 doesn't. Let's see, 8 minus 3.5. Yeah, that's right. Shouldn't doubt myself. Okay. So here we go. To find the perimeter, you're going to add all sides. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug in for the perimeter 52.5 because I've already been told that. And then the next step I'm going to do, this is my only expression for 2x minus 3.5, so I'm going to write that down, or 3.5. Then I have 2 x's. So instead of saying plus x, I'm going to put plus 2 times x. And I'm running out of room here. Then I have 2 of the expressions x plus 4. So I'm going to put plus 2 x plus 4. All that does is save me time from writing all that down over and over and over and over and over again. So 2x minus 3.5, and then 2 times x is just going to give me 2x. Then I've got to distribute this 2 right here. So I'm going to have plus 2x plus 8. Now I'm going to combine my like terms. Look at me, I'm underlining all my x's there. And remember over here I said I went through the picture and I added up all my x's and I got 6x. Well, 2 plus 2 plus 2 is going to give me 6. Let me write down this 52.5. And then you're going to take this negative 3.5 and combine it with this 8. 8 minus 3.5 is going to give me a positive 4.5. And now all you're going to do is solve for x. So I'm going to have 52.5 minus 4.5, subtracting that from both sides. So I get 48 equals 6x. Divide both sides by 6. X equals 8. Now always, now that I've solved for x, I go back and I read my problem and see what they wanted me to find. So you go back up here, it tells you what the perimeter is. It says, what is the value of x? That right there tells me I'm done with my problem. Okay? Sometimes they'll say, well, what's the measure of each side? Well, then you've got to take what you know for x and go and plug it in all those expressions. Anybody have any questions over that? Okay. Finding the radius when given the circumference. Now, and I don't know if y'all know the, let me see if I can remember how to do this. There we go, show file transfer. Y'all may have this, but I'm going to send it to you again just in case you don't. Oh, there we go. That's a geometry formula chart. It has all the formulas on it that you're going to need. You need this for this lesson. You're going to need it for the first 2 units at least next semester. So I would keep my geometry formula chart on my desktop. Okay, find radius when given circumference. Well, looking at that geometry chart, I know that the circumference of a circle is pi times d, or I can say 2 pi r, either one of those. Well, they've given me the circumference, and they want to know the radius, so I'm going to choose to use this formula right there. So my circumference is 96.8, so I'm going to use the 2 pi r. That's a funny looking pi. Okay, so I'm going to plug in 96.8 for the circumference, 2 pi r. Now then, remember pi isn't a variable. It's an actual number. And unless it tells you to, I always use the pi sign on my calculator. Now sometimes they'll tell you to use 3.14. But like I said, I always use the pi sign on my calculator if they don't tell me any different. So what you're going to do is divide both sides. You want that r all by itself because that r is going to tell me the answer to my problem. And give me just 1 second. I neglected to open up my calculator. 0.8 divided by 2. And I said I use the pi sign, so I'll go up here to the second key and then I click on pi and I hit enter and I get 152.053, and I believe it said round it to the nearest tenth. So I'm going to be taking this 0 and rounding it to 1. So if I'm rounding it to the nearest tenth, I'm going to have 152.1. So 152.1 equals r. That's a mighty big circle. Oh, that's centimeters. Luckily this is multiple choice. You won't have to write all this out, but I'm going to make sure I got my units in there. Okay, this one says finding the circumference when I'm given the area. So it says the area of a circle is 525. That's supposed to be centimeters squared. What's the circumference? So the area of a circle is pi r squared. They told me my area is 525. Well, right now the only way I can get r by itself is to divide both sides by pi. And I do the same thing in my calculator. I just key in 525 divided by, and then I push that second key and the pi sign. And I get, doesn't tell me where to round or anything. Usually if it doesn't tell me what to round to, I just round to the hundredth place, which is the second decimal. So I'm going to have 167.11 equals r squared. Now my r still isn't isolated, so what I'm going to have to do is take the square root of both sides. So what I do in my calculator then is I just push the second key and the x squared key, and I get the root sign, and I get a 12.93 equals my radius. Okay, so they didn't, I have to go back and I thought, oh, okay, wow, I found the radius. Now I'm going to go back and read my problem and see if that was all I was supposed to answer. It says, here's your area of a circle. It says, what's the circumference? Well, remember I told you earlier you can do pi times d, which is the diameter, or you can do 2 pi r for the circumference. And since I know the radius, I'm going to use 2 pi r. My radius, I just rounded to 12.93, and I really should have a squiggly sign there. So all I do is I take that 12.93 and I multiply it by 2 pi. 12.93 times 2 pi, and I get 81.24 for my circumference. Yep, that's 24. I was making sure I rounded it correctly. And that's going to be the answer right there. Okay, using the Pythagorean theorem to determine distance. Now this one, it says that Amarillo is 124 miles directly north of Lubbock and 285 miles directly east of Albuquerque, New Mexico. So if there was a road running straight from Albuquerque to Lubbock, how far would it be? Round your answer to the nearest whole number. So I've got Amarillo, and then it says that Amarillo is directly north of Lubbock, and then it's directly east of Albuquerque. What they're wanting to know is what is the length of that dashed line. Well, since we're talking directly north and directly east, we know that's a right triangle, and they gave us the miles. So what I do, since I know that I'm dealing with the Pythagorean theorem right here, I know I'm just going to do a squared plus b squared equals c squared, and I'm going to show my calculator for this. Said that Amarillo was 124 miles. Let me push clear. 124 squared plus the distance from Albuquerque was 285, and I'm going to square it. Now, all I have to do is find the square root of 96,601, and that'll tell me the miles from Albuquerque to New Mexico. So what I do here is I push the second and the root key, then I push the second and the negative key. If you look right above it, it says answer, A-N-S. And then I push enter. And it said to round it to the nearest whole number, so I'm going to have 310.8 will round to 311. 311 miles. That's all you've got to do to solve this kind of problem. Calculators are awesome. They're my best friend. So, AL to L, Albuquerque to Lubbock, is going to equal 311 miles.